Hey everyone, welcome to another edition of the Daily Oranges on the Beat. I'm Tony Olivero here with my fellow basketball beat writers Andrew John and Brett LoGiurato for the basketball season's first edition of On the Beat, coming at you as always from 744 Ostrom, previewing obviously the entire basketball season as SU's opening up after two exhibition games this Friday in the Dome against Northern Iowa. But before we get to that, there's a lot to touch on with this team for this year. After two exits from the Sweet 16, SU's aiming for the Final Four. Right now ranked 10th in the nation, and it seems like they got the depth and the talent to do it, but it all starts with Chris Joseph, who seems to be Jim Boeheim's next guy. And Andrew, what do you expect out of Joseph, I guess, for the entirety of the year? Can he be the next Johnny Flynn, the next Wes Johnson?
I don't know if he'll be the next Wes Johnson. Obviously, Wes Johnson was a special player and Big East Player of the Year last year, and I'm not sure if Chris Joseph will be able to make that kind of step, but I do think he'll be able to step into a leadership role this season. I think he can be the go-to guy, and I think you'll see a much improved Chris Joseph. And Coach Boeheim and Wes Johnson, Johnny Flynn, guys like that, they're really expecting great things out of him. They've seen him put the work in, and I think that they fully anticipate that he's ready to go.
Right. Obviously, this year it looks like the three leaders, the three veteran leaders that everybody, I guess, the older players have been mentioning. Brett, as you said that. They're expecting three guys to step up, or three veteran guys: Scoop, Rick Jackson, and obviously Chris. But it all starts with the guards, and Scoop's there returning as one of the two starters. What are you expecting out of Scoop this year? In his fourth year with the program.
Yeah, Scoop's really a great story. He's the kid that, the Raw City kid who had a lot of talent and really nothing, but he had basketball talent, and he just kind of made that into something. He went to New Magretti. Instead of going through the Philadelphia public school system, he went to a private Catholic school and really matured as a basketball player in person there. And now he came to SU. There have been so many bumps along the way, and it started in his freshman year when he was suspended, and then his sophomore year when he had to redshirt from playing injured, and he really came back last year. A brand new person, a brand new player. Off that injury, he shed 15 pounds, believing that was the reason for the stretch fracture in his leg, the extra weight. And he really came back, really had a large effect off the bench, along with Chris Joseph. And I think it'll be a tall order to replace Andy Routins, but one of the things that went kind of unnoticed was that he changed his shot motion from a really awkward motion his freshman year to more smooth last year, and he shot 39% from three last year. So I think he definitely has that ability, along with Brandon Trish, to be one of those surprise guys who could step up from beyond the arc and replacing Andy Routins. And as a leader, he has to do that too. So
similar, I guess, to those two stories with Chris Joseph and Scoop. Just taking the next step. It's been similar these last few years with SU, replacing similar players in similar ways. Another guy doing that is Rick Jackson. Obviously, Renze Nwaku's gone. And Rick's going to be the main big guy for this team this year. He shed a lot of weight. The way he's playing, he's running up and down the court a lot better. And, we're expecting big things, I guess, out of Rick this year, part of that veteran trio. But overall, I guess, do you see Rick as an improvement, as that main big guy over Renze even from last year? Would it be going too far to say that?
I don't think so. I mean, Onuaku was obviously an important part of the team the last few years, especially last year, as we saw that they really didn't quite reach as far as they wanted to without him in the lineup in the NCAA tournament. But I do think that Rick will come back. He'll be much more improved upon. He's a two-year starter, so he's got the experience banging in the Big East with the other big guys, and I think that we saw him trim down a little bit. He shaved about 30 pounds off of his body there, and he was able to hopefully get up and down the floor for Syracuse this year. I think that's something that he probably struggled with the last couple of years.
Obviously, Rick's going to be coupled there as SU big man with Fab Melo, the recruit everybody's talking about, the second, I guess, freshman Melo that SU's going to have here. And the main thing he brings to the table is just athleticism, I guess, and raw ability and just, I guess, talent there, along with Rick Jackson. But Fab's just one of the four freshmen. There's a lot of, all four of them are top 100 guys. All four are expected and are needed to play big minutes this year. Aside from Fab, I guess, what do you expect out of the other three?
I think after Fab, Deion Waiters is definitely a guy who can play a large role off the bench this year, but I think the most important freshman might be after Fab Melo might be Baye Musakeda, just for the simple fact that he is the main guy off the bench in the front court, other than Fab Melo and Rick Jackson. I think one of the guys who could have stepped up. He didn't look great last year in a limited role, but I think one of the guys who could have stepped up this year is Deshante Riley, and he's most likely out for the season. So with Deshante Riley out, Musakeda is going to have to play. He's going to play valuable minutes. So I think how he handles those minutes as a freshman, as a pretty raw freshman, is going to have a large role on the outcome of the season, I guess.
Andrew, I guess we touched on the other three freshmen. What do you expect out of C.J. Fair?
C.J. Fair, as we saw in the Kutztown game, he has an ability to get to the rim, and I think that's going to be his role this year, as a guy who can find his offense in spaces and get to the basket. Very similar to what Chris Joseph was able to do the last couple of years. And I think that I'm not sure how much he will play because of Sutherland and Mookie Jones coming off of the bench at that wing forward position, but I do think that C.J. Fair is a guy who can play, and definitely towards the future, I think that he's a good guy to have there.
Right. You mentioned two scenarios there where everybody's talking that after in most years Coach Boeheim has a 7-8 man rotation. People are saying that he may have a 10-man rotation this year, and that comes down to two scenarios. One with the wing players there, Sutherland, Mookie Jones, a sophomore, and C.J. Fair, who's going to get, I guess, time there, or how the time's going to be divvied up. And then also with the guards, you got Scoop and Brandon Trish coming back. But some people are saying that Deion Waiters might threaten for, starting minutes there at the point guard position. What do you expect out of those two situations where the guys are going to be fighting for minutes?
I think it really depends on their play, and I think Jim Boeheim, as the season goes along, he's going to play guys he trusts, and usually he only trusts 7 or 8 guys, but if 10 guys step up into that role, then I think he'd be more than glad to play all 10 guys. Regarding Waiters, I think he's probably the most advanced and mature out of the freshmen. Fab Melo is definitely a guy who can have a big effect on the defensive end, but I think Waiters has a well-rounded game. Self-admitted that he says he can do everything, so. We'll see, but I think he has the frame to do it. He's strong and he can get to the rim. So I think he'll definitely challenge Brandon Trish for minutes as the season goes along.
Yeah, I guess now that we touched on it, who are the players in those scenarios, and maybe not even just in those position battles, that you expect to step up this year? Is it a Mookie Jones over James Sutherland and C.J. Fair? Is it? Do you think Brandon Trish is going to hold on to that spot? How do you see it shaking down, Andrew?
I think that it's really important for Syracuse that they have Trish and they also have Scoop, two guys who have shown that they can run the offense, who can run the point, handle the ball, and distribute the ball. And then I think a lot of people are expecting Deion Waiters to even, in a pinch, be able to play the point guard position as well. So I think it's important to have those guys who can play multiple positions. It's really tough to tell how it's going to shake out now. I think that, I agree with Brett that Boeheim's going to go with the guys he trusts. I think that he's been reluctant, to put a freshman into a starting role early on unless he absolutely has to. This year he's going with Fab Melo. I think Deion Waiters could break into the starting position at the 2 guard if Trish is unable to get it done in the early going. But I think right away I think that Trish has that spot pretty firmly. He's pretty firmly entrenched in that spot, and I think he would have to go through a stretch where he doesn't play well in order for Deion Waiters to really step in there.
Right. Obviously, we talked about, I guess, who we think is going to step up, but overall, final thing here, how we think the season is going to play out, what's going to happen in non-conference play, Big East play, and obviously the NCAA tournament. Again, they're coming off back-to-back Sweet 16 exits. Especially last year, much earlier than they thought, even though Butler was one shot away from winning the national championship. How do you guys see it playing out? What's the theme of the season? What is going to be the feel of this season? Just how's it all going to go down?
I'm predicting Syracuse to go, around 23-8. I definitely think they'll go above 20 wins. I think they'll finish somewhere in the top 4 in the Big East. Right now, I predicted 4th, but that definitely could change. I don't think anyone expected them last year to finishing even the top 6, I guess. And once they got on a roll in the start of the season, that all changed pretty quickly. So you never really know. It depends on everything we've talked about. Can Chris Joseph step up? Can Scoop step up? Will there be a consistent 3-point threat, I guess, or threats? They went 5 of 29 in the first exhibition game from 3, and then they stepped it up, and it was the reason they beat Lemoyne and pulled away from Lemoyne last time around. But going into any basketball season, there are a lot of questions, and I guess how those questions are answered really depends on how it really shapes how the season ends up. But I think they'll definitely get above 20 wins. They're and I'm predicting them to finish 4th in the Big East right now. So.
And just NCAA tournament.
Oh yeah, I think they'll get back to the Sweet 16, and they'll probably have a different the same. They'll suffer the same fate, I guess, and 3rd straight Sweet 16 exit.
Yeah, I mean, you touched on a lot of really good things there, but what I see out of this team this year is, last year it was a surprising case of they were where they needed to be very early on, even though they lost that that exhibition game to Lemoyne. And I think that they even though they're in the top 10 right now, they kind of got up there in the rankings early on, and they were the team. They were as good. I guess they got to be as good as they were the rest of the season very early on. From this team, I think it's more about becoming. I think it's more about there's a lot of question marks to be answered, and I think they will answer those questions, but not as much in the early going this year. I do think they're only going to have 1 loss in out-of-conference play. I do think they're going to challenge for the Big East title, but I'm predicting them to finish 3rd in the Big East. I think where we're going to see it more so is once we get to the NCAA tournament play, because what I think is going to happen is they now have 3 point guard options. I think all 3 will be matured enough to handle the ball, unlike in that Butler game last year in a big moment like that. I think that Rick Jackson is going to be perhaps the surprise player this year, perhaps maybe even one of the top 2 big men in the Big East. I think he's going to make huge strides, and I think Chris Joseph is going to be the go-to guy. He's not going to be Wes Johnson, but he's going to be the go-to guy, and they do have a little bit more depth. So I do think that it's more so a case of them growing into where they need to be. I don't think that they're going to be mature enough without Andy, because they don't have Andy Rounds and Renzi Anawaku to win the Big East and be consistent in Big East play. But I think once NCAA tournament time comes around, they will be deep enough, and their point guard play will be solid enough and more mature enough to get to the Elite 8. So my prediction this year is 3rd in the Big East, 24-7 overall, lost in the Elite 8. 1 spot short of the place that Boeheim wants this team to be. What's your take, Andrew?
Yeah, I agree. I think you and I and even Brett are very similar in our predictions. I do think that they'll finish 3rd in the conference, probably around 25 wins or something like that. And I think that this team, if certain things go well for them, I think that they have a chance to even go further than they were last year. I don't think that they will ever reach the #1 ranking like they did this past season, and I don't think that they probably won't be a #1 seed in the NCAA tournament. But I do think that based on the intangibles that they have and the depth that they have, I think that they could go far. I predict them to probably go to the Elite 8. I think that they have a few things that are really key. I think they have good point guard play. Last year it was a little bit different because Brendan Trish was their starting point guard. He was only a freshman, and even though they did have Scoop, he was really only his 2nd year in the program, or 2nd year on the court because he had that medical red shirt. And then they also had Anawaku, who was out, and that was key. And now they have a legitimate big man, Fab Melo. Rick Jackson's, by all accounts, a little bit better. Chris Joseph is, going to be a go-to guy. So I think if you have good point guard play, you have a big man, and then you have like a really good top-tier wing guy, as I think that they do in all cases, I think that that's the recipe for going far in the tournament.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing fans are going to need to grasp entering the season. They do have all 3 of those things, or they will. They have, 3 guys who can step up and play the point. Chris Joseph, who's going to be, I guess you could say, a poor man's Wes Johnson, even though he's pretty damn good. And, of course, I think Rick Jackson will be better than Renzi. But that's it for now, I guess. Be sure to check out, came out today, the Daily Orange's basketball season preview. Everything you need to know about the Syracuse men's and women's basketball teams, stories, in-depth stories on the most important and relevant issues for both teams this year, as well as a national story on the NCAA tournament expanding, and a Big East story on Steve Lavin's begin to his tenure at St. John's. So be sure to check that out either online or in print. And as we said before, the season will be starting Friday night in the Dome against Northern Iowa, the team that kind of was the Cinderella of SU's of the NCAA tournament last year. And this is, I guess, a little fun fact. This may be the toughest season opener SU has had since the last time a freshman named Mello started off. They lost in the Dome they lost in Madison Square Garden to Memphis, and we all know how that year ended up. So here we go again. SU starting off number 10 in the country. That's it for now. We'll check back in with you guys after the Northern Iowa game. Thanks a lot, guys.